It only makes sense everything you just said. So when people complain about it, it's people who don't want to work and they just want to literally sit on their ass and get paid to do nothing, which bothers the living snot out of me.
Ladies and gentlemen, it has started. It has begun. The downfall of games media is starting to slip out of the access media's grasp. And I like to use the term access media because that's really all this is this the reason why these outlets exist is to have access to things, access to games early, access to live events. Access is the key to all this, right? We could call them legacy, we could call them old school, whatever. But the blog, the video game blog, is obsolete at this point. People's news is gathered through social media, through YouTube, and the blog itself as a standalone venture is dead. And that is where we find Kotaku Australia as Kotaku Australia, which, by the way, is a licensed arm of the Kotaku brand here in the States. So there's Kotaku.com and there's Kotaku Australia. They are no longer going to be around, Kotaku Australia, after the parent company, Pedestrian Group, announced a restructure of things. So pretty much Vice, Gizmodo, Refinery 2029, which I had not heard of, Kotaku and Lifehacker brands, which were licensed, are no longer going to exist, as it's once again a cost-cutting thing. Says we made the tough decision to focus on our wholly owned pedestrian brands where we control the strategy, the content, the product, the sales, and the outcome, the entire business. This will have an impact on roles within the company, and I appreciate the uncertainty this change creates. So we will be in contact immediately with those people. So this is going to affect lots of people over at Kotaku Australia, which, by the way, is a small team. The managing editor, Dave Smith, says it's been one of the great joys of my life to wake up every day and run a site I love with all my heart. We were the second highest read site in the group after Pedestrian TV, and we still had so much we wanted to do. The plans I had were just getting started, alas. So there we go. Another one bites the dust in the video game vlogosphere. Once again, this to be clear, this is just a licensing. Where did he go? This is a licensing play that pretty much went awry. And this is one of those things. It's kind of interesting to see as Grum's put this together. Grum's has kind of become this consolidator of everything, which is very, very convenient for folks like us talking about this. But Kotaku Australia, what's interesting about this is that a lot of the archive content that was on the original Kotaku website is only found on the Kotaku Australia website. So Kotaku may lose most of their archive content and like all these images from as early as 5 years ago due to the closing of Australia. As Luke Plunkett, who used to work there, he said that Kotaku Australia was the only place where articles were stored and for some reason many images, which that doesn't make any sense. And on the surface, you say, like, why does that matter? Well, here's why it matters. Because all of those websites, all of those articles, that all drives search engine optimization. So if all that archive content goes away, so does all that search engine optimization for Kotaku.com. If those are so it makes your ability to be found considerably harder. I went through this personally back in the Screw Attack days where I made the idiotic decision between different versions of the site to more or less wipe the site clean, start it from scratch, and it destroyed our search engine optimization. So it could have an effect on Kotaku.com as far as discoverability, which from a website perspective that's already struggling is very, very hard. So that's just kind of a different perspective on all this stuff. And you may be asking yourself, like, hey, what is Kotaku.com? What do those writers have to say about this? Well, they are sending out their solidarity as Alyssa Mercante has come out and said, sending solidarity and love to the amazing writers at Kotaku Australia and all the other sites affected. You are all stars and deserve better. Capitalism is cruel. Your work remains always.
It is
So
pretty
there we
cruel to useless people. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'll say this statement is fascinating because capitalism is the only reason why these people have jobs to begin with.
Well, she wants to be the state's gaming website.
Right. But that's more or less what they're doing, right? That's what they are. They are a propagandist arm when it comes to this stuff. They are more or less a Xerox copier of bullet points given to them by developers and publishers who want to go out and deliver their message, right? And that's where this whole thing starts and stops with. They continue, or she continues, says, the internet and the rats infesting it are even crueler. But a reminder, cheering for good people losing their jobs while men get rich off their labor is morally bankrupt. Okay. And by the way, I hate that I even have to say this, but let's stop the reactionary ride before it gains steam. We are not affiliated with Kotaku Australia. We don't share anything except the love for games and good reporting.
That's not true.
Sorry.
You share
yeah,
the brand name, and the brand is weak. Therefore, the Australian side piece that you have is going under because your brand as a whole is weak and a joke.
Good reporting.
Well, and the idea that losing the job while men get rich off their labor, and this whole idea of like capitalism, right? Like we're talking about somebody who wouldn't have a job without capitalism, you know, and they continue on with the more tweets. It says, you have no idea what journalism is. Your websites look like they're from 2001. They're riddled with typos. You use yourself as a source for quote stories, which is by the way, which is exactly the game plan that these websites do. They source each other.
They do.
Yes.
All the time.
Yeah, and you talked about that.
And that's not just gaming. That's all of Access Media. Because like one of them will write an article and then they'll cite that article and write their own article. It's just them citing each other all the time. That's like half of the sources in most of the mainstream articles. They come from other mainstream articles.
Continued here. Said, you have an internet connection and webcam and you think you have something worthy to say. You don't. We could set up my Nana with a Razer Kaio in her home and she'd make more coherent shit. It's a shame that private equity and Google have gutted legacy media sites with the stupidest, cruelest people in the world are rushing in to fill the gaps.
That's projection right there.
Yeah. Oh my God. Is it projection? 1000%. And I think that's the biggest thing with this whole thing is when it comes to private equity was keeping Kotaku, is keeping Kotaku afloat right now. That's the only reason why she has a job right now. And the fact that she and other journalists or bloggers for Kotaku can't see that is fascinating. Private equity gave them a leash to move away from writing journals, writing guides, to giving them an extra couple month leash to kind of figure it out, which they have not.
Somebody in the chat says, I ruined my website, but it's men's fault.
Right.
That's from Biz Razorback. That's true. It's totally true. She's blaming men for it. Didn't she in that one tweet blame men?
Yes. Yeah. The tweet earlier. Yes, of course. And doesn't it always go back to that? Always. Yes. Capitalism is cruel. And we have, while men get richer off the labor, morally bankrupt. What is morally bankrupt about providing somebody with income to do their job? That's the thing I just never understood about this. The idea that, you know, with capitalism as a whole, here's the thing about capitalism. Capitalism removes the weak. It removes the weak. So if you're good and you can swim, you'll swim. The cream rises to the top with capitalism. And that's the one thing that they don't understand. And yes, naturally, people will employ you. Like I encourage her to go out and try to find a job doing what she does on her own website without the safety net of a paycheck. That's the thing that is totally lost in this conversation, is that capitalism involves risks, going out and trying things. So the people who are taking that risk and employing people should be rewarded for that risk. It is not risky to have a day-to-day 9 to 5 job. The people who took risks are the ones who should ultimately be rewarded for that risk, for that investment, for them taking the time of working 80-hour weeks to start up a company, investing their own money. They're the people who should see it on the backside, which I just don't understand how you can argue against that. But that's just me. Maybe I'm just totally off my rocker here, but it seems to be a pretty good system. And I don't know. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Logan, you got anything?
Well, as someone who owns their own business, it only makes sense everything you just said. So when people complain about it, it's people who don't want to work and they just want to literally sit on their ass and get paid to do nothing, which bothers the living snot out of me. Because as someone who's had to work, their entire life to get what they had, it makes it so much better to look at, just look at the junk behind me. That stuff is awesome, but I worked for it. So whether it's working that 9 to 5 or starting my own business or something. So when people do that, it just makes me go. So, but hey, I don't expect anything less from a Kotaku contributor.
Flash, you got anything on this?
Well, this is bound to happen. I mean, there was a time when these people used to speak for us, and at some point they switched to caring more about being corporate mouthpieces than catering to the people that keep them going. So naturally, they flock to people that did represent them, and that's why you see all these YouTubers and everybody. Like, you have some outfits like, what's the one that Colin does? Sacred Symbols. There's other outlets that people can go to for game talk instead of having to hear how bad they are and how much capitalism stinks and butt plugs with Animal Crossing games and the best way to get the best vibration in your ass. Like, they did this to themselves, and now they're mad that, chickens are coming home to roost on them. And
the irony of what you just said, Flash, is not lost on me, as Emily Spindler is the Australian version of Alyssa Mercante. She is no longer employed, but she had this to say. She says,
oh, look at that hair.
Here's her bio: journalist, gamer, gremlin, she, her, with a flag.
Glad you put that there. I couldn't tell.
Yes. I also want it to be known that the last yarn published by me to the site is about me theorizing that 2 Nintendo characters explored each other's bodies. What a send-off.
What?
Who wants to fucking read that? Nobody. Except me. I didn't see that article, and I would have made a video on it.
I'm curious about this article. I want to find it. Let's read it. So this is, I think, Nintendogs, Ted and Archie explored each other's bodies. By Emily Splendor, published 3 days ago, July 5th.
Hard-hitting journalism right there.
Mm-hmm.
How long is this article, Babs?
Too long.
That long. Too long.
Okay.
We can sum it up by they had sex in her mind. Yeah.
Archie and Ted.
Nintendogs.
From
give
Deep
us a
Lore, the
read.
2005 Pet Simulator. Wow.
Yeah, give us a read of the first paragraph here. Let's just get to the mindset of this. And this is the hard-hitting journalism that Australians are losing.
Mm-hmm. In a world of situationships and ghosting, there's one relationship that will remain a guiding star for kids of the 2000s. If you tried to guess who I'm talking about, you probably heard an extremely incorrect buzzer noise. I'm talking about the Nintendogs, dog show commentators, Archie and Ted. Don't ask me how I know, but I strongly believe these two unassuming dudes explored each other's bodies in the deep lore of the 2005 Pet Simulator, and I won't be convinced otherwise.
Deep lore.